The Financial Times writing a new op-ed titled, quote, Joe Biden loses to Xi Jinping in battle for Latin America. China also rejecting a meeting with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin during the ASEAN defense ministers meeting in Laos this week. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute senior fellow and author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America, Gordon Chang. Gordon, those pictures speak volumes, don't they?
Well, they certainly do. You know, a lot of Americans consider Latin America, South America to be America's backyard. Well, it's really China's backyard. You know, China is South America's largest trading partner. If it weren't for Mexican trade with the U.S., China would be Latin America's biggest partner. You know, we can win back this region with trade. We only have one free trade agreement with Central America and 3 with South America. If we tie trade to the United States, what we can do is we can free ourselves from China, we can end the migrant crisis, we can shorten our supply chains and clean the air. So what's not to like?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of the issue here is that there's never been any deterrence put in place by the Democrats, by the Biden administration, to stop China from its bad behavior. It's rolling over America, Tricia. And creating all these new partnerships. Jump in here.
Exactly. I mean, 100,000 Americans we know die per year from fentanyl, and a lot of this is coming straight from China. What can the Trump administration do? Is it sanctions? What do we do to actually prevent these really almost acts of war from China to U.S. citizens?
Yeah, killing tens of thousands of Americans a year. And this is a Communist Party project. This is not just some Chinese criminals, because the Communist Party knows and it approves this, and they support it with all across the board help. You know, what we have to first do is acknowledge that this is China's project, that it is murder of Americans, and then start imposing some severe costs like trade, tariffs, all sorts of other things that we can do. You know, President Trump has told Maria a number of times, at least 60% tariffs on Chinese goods. You do that, you cripple China. You do not give them the opportunity and the resources to go after and kill Americans with fentanyl, with COVID, with everything else.
Yeah, it's incredible how the Democrats are so soft on China, and yet all we ever hear is Russia, 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 and collusion with Trump and the rest. Look at all of that time wasted where they were pushing this lie and, in fact, allowing China to eat our lunch over and over again. The U.S.-China Economic and Security Review Commission recommending the U.S. toughen its trade relationship with China in its annual report to Congress, exactly what Trump wants to do. The commission also calling for the U.S. to end its permanent normal trade relations with Beijing for the first time. Gordon, this is an important one because China gets all sorts of accommodations because they claim they are an emerging economy. I mean, give me a break. The Chinese economy is the second largest economy in the world. Are they still emerging or developing?
Yeah, clearly you're right. What we have to do is we have to end PNTR. China should never have had it in the first place, but now we can take it away.
Explain PNTR.
Permanent normal trade relations. And that gives them basically everything that we give to everybody else. So it's reciprocity on steroids. The thing is, China uses all of this trade to develop its military, which is configured to kill Americans. They use it to support their fentanyl gangs. The list goes on and on. They could not afford to assault us, would not be for our money. And by the way, you know, Russia couldn't continue the war in Ukraine without China's support. Iran could not have assaulted Israel without China's support. This is China behind all of these proxy wars, setting the world on fire, and we're financing it.
And it was a year of cabinet members going to kiss the ring in China, right, Mark? How many meetings did Secretary Yellen and all these other people have, Blinken, with Chinese officials? For what? What do we get out of it?
Good question. I have no idea. But, I mean, you look at, obviously, how much more hawkish the Trump administration is going to be on China. And you mentioned this, I think it was last week, that I think you said there's less activity in the South China Sea, which obviously should be good for the semiconductor industry, you would think. But I want to ask you about China's economy, because in the way I see it, it looks like a house of cards, right? We've been talking for months and months and months about how they built all these ghost towns where no one's living there. They're modeling in an increase in population where we actually know they're a population in decline, right? Now they're building 30,000 miles of high-speed rail, which, again, is modeling in more passengers in the future, but their population is in decline. It just seems like their economy is just a complete farce.
Yeah, right now they're at a knife's edge. there's got too much of everything. The high-speed rail line system, it is not economically viable on its own, and they're adding, as you say, more. They've got enough vacant apartments for 1.3 billion people.
Wow.
They've got infrastructure for a country that is much larger than it actually is. And as you point out, population is going to decline. By the end of this century, China probably will have only 1/3 the number of people that it has today. And I don't know how they're going to deal with this because there's no solutions for them.
Yeah, meanwhile, they're throwing all the freedom fighters in jail, did so obviously in Hong Kong. Pro-democracy activist and the founder of Apple Daily, Jimmy Lai, taking the stand for the first time in his landmark Hong Kong national security trial yesterday. He denied claims that he tried to influence country's foreign policy against China. Lai has pleaded not guilty to 2 charges of conspiracy to collude with foreign forces and conspiracy to publish seditious material. Jimmy Lai was a friend to this program and has been on with me many times. I spoke with him right before he was arrested back in 2020 while he was out on bail. Here's what he told me then.
I expected I would have to go to jail, but I don't know when and for how long. But definitely I would not admit guilty, because for somebody who is determined to resist, I would never admit guilty.
In a briefing yesterday, China's foreign ministry called Lai, quote, the principal mastermind and perpetrator behind the series of riots that shook Hong Kong in 2019. Gordon, your reaction, and I also want to get your reaction to what Trump could do about China, because yesterday we reported on an analyst report out of TD Cowen. And the analyst there said that, noted that Trump has hired lots of China hawks, and he's nominating China hawks like Marco Rubio for Secretary of State. And one of the ideas was that the analyst believes that we, in fact, will see new regulations to delist Chinese stocks from U.S. exchanges. Do you believe that is possible in a Trump administration? And what is your reaction to what happened with Jimmy Lai yesterday and this week?
Yeah, certainly we can delist Chinese stocks, and it's possible because they've got all these special privileges that companies from no other country, including the U.S., don't have. So that is just outrageous. In terms of what Trump can do with Jimmy Lai, it's not only the tariffs. He can start enforcing the Tariff Act of 1930, which prohibits the importation into the U.S. of goods made with forced labor. And many of Chinese goods and all of their green products are made with forced labor of Uyghurs. So there's a lot there that we can actually push the Chinese in better directions. Jimmy Lai is a hero. So is Benny Tai, another pro-democracy activist who just got a 10-year sentence a couple days ago. They are really going after everybody who has any thought that the Chinese don't like.
And if you say anything negative about the CCP, you'll be thrown in jail, certainly in Hong Kong or in China. But let's not forget there are Chinese police stations on American soil right now. Are they going after Chinese Americans as well?
Well, they certainly are. There are about 7 to 9 of them, according to the New York Post and the Daily Caller. That's after they closed the one in this city in Chinatown.
Unbelievable.
But they left the other ones still standing. And we still allow the Chinese consular officials to get away with violating our sovereignty, and Ministry of State security agents doing the same thing. It's just totally outrageous.
Gordon, thank you. Great conversation. We appreciate you. Gordon Chang.